This is part 2 of our video, and what I'm going to have you guys do now is go ahead and import another image into this document. And the way I'd like you to do it is go to File, Place Embedded, and go ahead and search for the Photoshop image number 2, labeled number 2. Here it is, and we're going to go ahead and open it up, hit Place, and you'll notice again that it is scaled to fit inside of the frame or the window. What I'd like you to do is open it up so that it actually fills up the screen. What you might need to do is Command minus a couple of times so that you can see the entire area. Once it fits the top and bottom completely, hit the return key. You can see that there's a little issue here. If you do make an issue, and you'll notice that it's still a smart object at this point, that means we haven't pixelated it at all. You can actually go back and re-modify this image or any image just by going to the Edit, Free Transform, or the new keyboard shortcut I'd like you to put down on your notes is Command T. I use that all the time, and then you get your handles back, and then you can actually change and modify the size so that it more than fits on the page. So Command T will allow you to modify the size. It'll also allow you to rotate the image, as you can see here. If you're holding the Shift key down in Photoshop, you can actually modify it in this way as well. So you can make it, distort it, and do whatever you need. I'm going to undo that. Once you're happy with how the image looks, after selecting Edit, Free Transform, hit the Return key again to set that transformation to be permanent. Now again, just a review, you want to select the number 2 here, hold the Control key, and then make sure you rasterize the layer. We don't want to see any smart objects in this layer. I'm going to go ahead and double click that number 2 and call it Clouds, and just hit the Return key, and now I have a new Clouds layer. At this point, we've got our leaves layer. I'm going to turn them on so you can see them here, and then the cloud layer on top. You could always reorder these layers just by moving them around, and you'll notice that the little blue line tells you when you're above or below a layer. If it's a blue square, it tells you to put it into that thing. So I don't want to put the clouds in the leaves folder here. Now we're going to go ahead and save our document, which we haven't done yet. So this will be number 7 or 8, I think. After our transform, I want you to go to File, Save. This is the first time we've saved it, so we're going to put it on our desktop. So you should see the desktop here, and we're going to just call it part Photoshop, part Photoshop tutorial. And we're just going to save it. Now what that did is saved every single layer that you've created in that right order. All the folders, everything you've done is saved into that file. So this is not the type of file you would actually want to bring into another program like Illustrator, because there's so many layers that it would be confusing unless that's what you wanted. So later we're going to be saving this as a JPEG, and that will flatten. Only what you see then will be exported. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we've got our Move tool selected here, and I'm going to jump the clouds layer, Command J, so that this won't be modified. And I'm going to turn off the clouds layer so we don't see it underneath. So it's kind of like here. I'm going to even call it Clouds Original, and just make it hidden. I'm going to make sure that the leaves, I'm going to turn off this top cloud just for temporarily, and I'm going to make sure one of my leaves images is on, maybe the saturation and vibrance layer, and then I'm going to close up that folder, and then I'm going to turn on this clouds copy layer, and I want you to start playing with the sliders that we learned in Illustrator last time. So we've got the opacity slider that you can see. You can then see through this clouds copy layer to the leaves, as you can kind of see here. And we also have our blend modes, so you can kind of see how you can get you can work with the blend modes in addition to the opacity slider to interact with the things that you see on screen. So the blend modes are very similar to the blend modes in Illustrator, but in this case you'll see that this layer, Clouds Copy, is not interacting with Clouds Original, but all of a sudden is interacting with this folder. And you can turn off the layers on and off to see how these layers affect each other. So currently Clouds Copy is in a difference mode, so I'm just going to call it Clouds Difference. ends. Okay. Another possibility, I'm going to take the original clouds layer and jump it again. And this time I'm going to call it transform. And I'm going to turn it on. And you'll notice that these two layers now are interacting with the difference mode. This is difference. And what's the difference between these two layers? Nothing. So in order for this difference to actually work, I'm going to select one of these two layers, and using my move tool, I'm just going to slightly shift it. And you'll see right away, I'm going to zoom in so you can see that when I shift the layer, the actual difference between the two becomes apparent. So it's only the difference between these two layers that's the difference tool is actually working on. So you can get some interesting effects doing this type of thing by just moving the layers with the difference selected. Of course, you could just go back to normal and then change the opacity, and by just moving the layers, it looks like it's blurred or those kinds of things. So again, working with two similar layers can create some interesting effects as well. Another thing you can do, we're going to go ahead and go back to difference here and leave it there, and then select our clouds transform layer here. And you can see I can move that around as well. And underneath, you see there are leaves, in fact, visible. So something to be aware of. Let's see. So we're going to go to Command T. And you'll notice that that allows me to select the layer. I'm zoomed out. And then I'm going to make this much, much bigger so that I only see the clouds. So this is what I'm going to be doing. And then I move it so that I can only see the clouds in the space, and then hit return. Okay, so this is how this top layer is interacting with the bottom layer. And I'm going to turn off this top layer, clouds difference, and select cloud transform. And I'm going to jump it again. And with the move tool selected, I'm going to physically move it over here and change the blend mode to something like multiply. And I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to jump it again, and you'll notice that when you jump a layer that already has a blend mode associated with it, along with opacity, it remembers that. So I'm going to move this again and maybe transform it so that it's a little bit different. So this is one way you can actually work with images that have lots of different that have like some interesting things, but you want to be able to use them as texture or some type of element. So as you can see, they're multiplied, but maybe if I use soft light for this one, and then soft light for this one, and then maybe made this kind normal, then you can kind of see how these different clouds are interacting, giving us a very soft, interesting look. I could make soft light for this one as well, and then turn on the original clouds layer that's below us here, and then maybe turn on this difference right up here, and maybe change that to a different blend mode that makes everything really interesting. And so at this point, we've got this little this interesting image going on. It's made up from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different layers. So what I'm going to do is, say for instance, I really love what I'm seeing here, but because it's 5 layers, I could obviously put them into a single folder by shift selecting them and hitting the folder button. But instead, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to collapse or crush all these layers down into a single image that we're seeing here. And the way you do that is Command E as an echo. Now once you do this, you can undo it at that point, but this is going to be a permanent thing. So if you don't like what you're seeing, or if you wanted to move one of these layers a little bit around so that they look different, or if you see a mistake afterwards, it's going to be too late. So shift select all the layers you want to crush together, and then Command E. That'll be your final note for before we save. At that point, it took all those layers and turned them into this single, like, one layer that we're seeing here. You can kind of see that here, and you see that if we zoom out and transform it, that it remembers all the stuff from you can see all the stuff on the outside as well. So if you see like you've been working with multiple layers here, but they've also had lots of extra stuff here on the outside. I'm going to hit escape or like undo that. There we go. Let's see. Escape. Just had QuickTime going on here. So finally, again, you can always turn on that leaves layer and have the top layer working with the bottom layer, and you can kind of see how that works here. So playing with the idea of opacity, blend modes here, different layers, moving them around, transforming them. And then finally, you'll want to export what you have so you could use it for your poster. So you'll go to File. This time we're going to go to Save As. And instead of Photoshop, this is really important, we're going to save it as a JPEG. What that will do is it will take all the things, all the layers in Photoshop and crush them down into a single JPEG that has no layers whatsoever. And it'll tell you that it will not be able to save the layers. We're going to call it Photoshop Tutorial 2. And we're going to hit the Save button. And then we are asked in this window, if we did everything correct, what size or what type of like quality we want. For this one, I'm just going to lower the quality to like maybe 9 or something like that, and hit OK. And at that point, we've saved that JPEG, as you can see, onto the desktop, and it is a smaller file because it's 1.7 megabytes as compared to our Photoshop tutorial PSD file, which has all the layers, and that's 500 megabytes. And you can see that's almost a gigabyte of space for just this one file. So this is really going to require you to have a good computer with a little bit of storage. So if you're working on the cloud, this is going to feel really slow. So my suggestion would be go to the lab at that point. I'm going to save this one more time. So I'm going to go back to Photoshop and go File, Save. And that's going to save this after 90. It'll tell you it's saving here. And it's going to keep all the layers and those kinds of things as well. So what I'd like you to turn in is an image that you work on that's kind of a blend of different photographs that you've taken. And I want you to also turn in the notes to show me that you've been able to understand that. Now the photograph the thing you're going to turn in is going to be 11.5 across by 17.5 inches up and down, 300 pixels, but I want it to be the JPEG and not the Photoshop file because that'll be too big. Okay, so hopefully this has helped a little bit getting your head around the idea of layers, turning them on and off, adding filters to the layers, and also working with the idea of blend modes and opacity. Next time we'll be working with several of the other tools and going over how to select, remove, modify, and those kinds of things, different elements in your photo. Okay, thanks, bye.